Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. No one can deny the fact that there are literally millions of people suffering in many shapes and forms in various levels throughout the world. Some people ask why? How can we reconcile this? Some people ask, how could God allow it? In fact, that is the excuse atheists bring for disbelieving in God. As they say, if God exists, then why does he allow it? The short and obvious answer is that God is all aware and witnesses all things, including the human suffering. However, if God is supposed to interfere in natural progression of events, disrupt his own natural laws, then this life would be predetermined, jabri, and man would have no role or no choice in doing bad or good. One might say, you see all the children dying in Africa from starvation. Why doesn't God fix it? If God fixes that, then he should fix it for people in Syria, then Yemen, and the list goes on. Before you know it, it is all handled by God and not the human hands. The questions then become, what is man's role in this life? What is his purpose or the purpose of his creation? And what sets him apart from other creations of God? Once we establish the answer to these questions, man's purpose as intended by God, man's stages of life, his features or distinctions, then we can answer the question of suffering. Since we already have answered these questions in detail in other lectures, I give short answers to each. Number one, what are man's distinguishing features? His intellect and ability to learn, which means man's mind and knowledge can evolve over time. His ability to speak, read, and write, hence transfer knowledge from one generation to the other without even meeting one another. For example, we can learn from someone whom we don't know and from another time through his writings. The next thing is free will, man's ability to make choices, good or bad, hence benefit or suffer the consequences. God distinguished man with these features or privileges, and of course, with these come responsibility and growth. And that takes us to the next question. What is man's purpose then? What did God create him for? According to the Quran, Allah said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِي. I have not created mankind and jinn except to worship me. And in another place says, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. He who created death and life, that he may try which of you is best in conduct, deed. Yes, but what do these really mean? One might say, God does not need our worship and has no need to test us. Is there an overarching reason or ultimate goal beyond these two reasons that we mentioned? Perhaps these two are the means by which we reach the ultimate goal, which is what? Let's answer this question with an example. Imagine you plant a fruit seed or sprout in the ground with the soil you have been preparing for it. Then you start watering it, giving it nutrition, and taking care of it in every way. Your expectation is not for the tree to bear fruit tomorrow or the next day. You know you must nurture it through every season in the harsh weather and from pests, perhaps, until someday it will grow to a full tree, flower, and eventually give fruit. Once it bears fruit, your ultimate goal for this tree has been achieved, or it has reached its completion. That is indeed what God wants for us. Allah wants mankind to reach his full potential or peak of perfection, what we call kamal or completion. But what is the process? Well, just like your tree, God's aim was so man strives and struggles through all events and trials in his life, good and bad, in order to reach the peak of his perfection, kamal or humanity he intended. We can then see what these verses mean. Without the struggle and test, one cannot reach the perfection. A student earns his A grade through effort and struggle. And indeed, a good grade without hard study is not worth anything. This world and its nature is full of ups and downs, events and trials, good and bad, which we humans help shape or make happen with our own hands through our intellect. Through our intellect, reasoning, and the free will God has given us. Same thing with the purpose of worship. Without knowing God, mankind cannot worship God. Hence, we'll end up worshiping others and go astray. Hence, suffer in this life and the next. The verse says, I created man to worship me, لِيَعْبُدُونِ. That is why Allah puts emphasis throughout the Quran on these two things, worshiping him and life trials. So man reaches his completion. Just like when the teacher says, if you sign up to my class, I will give tests. God says, once you sign up to worship me alone, there will be tests. The difference is, teacher gives the same test to all students, whereas God gives different tests to different people according to what he has given them. His tests are given through the natural laws he has put in operation. When and where all this happens, that takes us to the next question. Number 3, what are man's life stages? Is this life all there is? No. Allah summarizes it. فَهُوَ الَّذِي أَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَكَفُورٌ. It is he who gave you life, then will cause you to die, and then will again give you life. Truly, man is most ungrateful. The verse highlights the fact God gave us life in mother's womb, where the first chapter in our life began. And with our death, this chapter ends. He then gives us another life, which is the next chapter in our life. Each chapter has its own purpose and characteristic. This life, which is full of trials and events, is also a place for planting the tree and taking care of our deeds, which are under our control, by making choices. The next life is place of harvest, to see the consequences of our actions and choices. According to the Quran, our present life, with all its joy and suffering, is temporary, while the next life is permanent. Death is just like a door through which we have to pass to enter into a new life. In Islam, the next life is a reality beyond any doubt. Both dimensions, this life and the life to come, are welded together, one merging into the other. The only difference is that the second phase of human life is reflective of how we conduct ourselves in this first phase of life. Therefore, according to Islamic perspective, many who might have lived a life of suffering in this temporary world may enjoy the most blissful and everlasting life in the next world, in what is known as the heaven, paradise. And many who might have enjoyed sinful and momentary pleasures of this material world may go through a grievous torment in next life, in what is known as the hell. It all depends how we conduct ourselves under given circumstances in this life. Of course, in Islam, one could have a happy, peaceful, and content life in this world as well as the next. The topic here is about those who suffer in this life in various levels. Islam acknowledges that life is full of suffering, starting as early as human conception in mother's womb and during the process of childbirth. Then followed by other sufferings, as the Quran says, and we have enjoined on man to be good to his parents, his mother, who bears him in suffering after suffering of weakness. Or in another place, has there not come upon man a period of time when he was not a thing worth mentioning? Indeed, we created man from sperm drop mixture that we may try him, and we made him hearing and seeing. Indeed, we have shown him the way, giving him the freedom of choice, whether he be grateful or ungrateful. Not only through a painful suffering in the process of childbirth, the Quran also acknowledges the existence of human suffering in various forms throughout the human experience. What are these types? First type, there are natural disasters and climatic tragedies like earthquakes, floods, storms, famines, and perhaps some epidemic and endemic diseases and plagues. Moreover, there are many illnesses and bodily injuries and sufferings. These calamities do occur in consequence of a wider circle of natural laws that are necessary to exist in the vast universe in which human life is an important but still a very small portion of. The laws of nature that sometimes cause these sufferings are put in place by the Creator actually to support and evolve life on earth in its totality. If these natural laws are taken out of the universal equation, the very existence of every living thing will be jeopardized. According to the Quran, the study of natural phenomena show us that despite the devastation suffered by some humans, God's mercy, rahmah, is the most overwhelming attribute in nature that creates, maintains, and evolves all forms of life, including human life. For example, a thunderstorm may bring us much needed rain to replenish our water reservoirs and water our lands. Yet, it can cause a flood as well. Of course, to some degree, extreme weathers may be a result of global warming caused by man's actions. Now, speaking of man's actions, secondly, there are definite man-made inflictions that cause other humans to suffer physical pain and mental anguish, and often even death, such as destruction, injustice, corruption, murder, wrongful imprisonment, rape, theft, physical and emotional abuse, economical exploitation, slavery, war, and genocide. The list of these sinful acts and social crime is very long indeed. We may also add onto this list the environmental destruction and pollution caused by mankind. We all agree the man-made inflictions are far worse, deadly, and have caused more sufferings than those caused by natural disasters. Sadly, these man-made sufferings can be prevented or eliminated by man's choices and decisions, but are not. These inflictions caused by some are due to abuse of what we call man's free will. And we certainly cannot say that free will is an evil in itself. Without free will, man would lose his very essence of his existence. Therefore, for causing suffering, pain, and death to others through the misuse of one's free will, it is mankind who remains responsible to God, not God responsible to mankind. To eliminate suffering caused by humans, God has commanded us not to inflict any harm on others, and those who do so must face the consequences. Therefore, to establish a just society is one of the most important obligations taught by Islam. Those who may escape the corporal punishment in this world shall have God's punishment waiting in the next life, where the ultimate justice is served. Thirdly, there are man's self-inflicted sufferings. These could be accidental or intentional. The Quran prohibits inflicting self-injuries, especially committing suicide. The sufferings that we may inflict upon ourselves are mostly caused by our mental state of being, which we have the choice to control, with or without others' help. These miseries are usually caused by our own arrogance, anger, jealousy, depression, or addictions, such as drug abuse, alcoholism, and gambling. For all these kinds of sufferings, man himself remains responsible and accountable to God, and not the vice versa. God is ever ready to forgive our transgressions against ourselves. The Quran is very clear on this point, that even the smallest of an action, good or bad, committed in this life by anyone will not go unnoticed. As the Quran says, then whosoever has done so much as an atom's weight of good will see its good result. And whosoever has done an atom's weight of evil will also see its evil result. Or in another place says, every soul shall taste death, and you shall be paid in full your rewards only on the day of resurrection. So whosoever is saved from the fire and is made to enter paradise, that person has indeed attained his goal. And life of this world is nothing but a deceitful possession. You shall surely be tried with your possessions and your persons. We can say then, just like the farmer who planted the seed but did not take care of it, hence it never grew to bear fruit or reach its completion, when man makes wrong choices in this life, he then does not reach the completion God intended for him. Therefore, no matter how much a person suffers in this world, as long as he or she is engaged according to his or her capacity in repelling the evil and doing the good deeds, the joys and comforts of the life to come are far greater, unparalleled, and everlasting as compared with human sufferings of this life. The human sufferings of this life are termed as a trial, a test, or evaluation, or validation to measure the success and strength of each human soul and its capacity to do good deeds. This, in fact, is the real jihad, struggle in Islam. So, according to the Quran, all the tragedy, affliction, grief, and fear that we may have to go through in this life are actually tests from God and His natural laws. If we pass the tests and remain prayerful and patient and put our trust in God during the period of suffering, then the end result is that God grants us boundless joy, happiness in this life and the next. Thus, by understanding the continuous nature of life in its totality, the human suffering does not remain an issue to be settled by challenging the existence of God or goodness of the Creator. Once we are able to conceive and believe that every soul has to enter another dimension of life by passing through the door of death, only then we fully appreciate the existence of God who reaches the depth of our souls to enhance its strength through our endurance of suffering and thus make us the winners in the long run. The Quran elaborates this point by narrating to us how all the men and women of God, especially His most beloved, the prophets, and the righteous persons who went through all sorts of human sufferings, but none of them ever lost their hope, their trust in God's help, and they all endured the pain, anguish, and fear with utmost patience, sincerity, and perseverance. And at the end, they were all winners. The Quran gives few examples of these tests. O you who believe, seek God's help with perfect patience and prayer, for surely God is with the patiently persevering, sabirin, and we will certainly reward you after trying you, testing you with something of fear and hunger and some loss of material and lives and fruits of your toil. Give glad tidings to the patiently persevering. So here is the punchline. The Quranic approach to this is very unique. Once you study the Quran, you will find a list of qualities man should strive for in order to reach success and his completion, kamal. Among these, you will see qualities like being kind, giving, merciful, loving, peaceful, forgiving, truthful, and just. The Quran also introduces us to God's attributes such as the compassionate, the merciful, the truth, the just, all-knowing, all-aware, the forgiving, the protector, the wise, the truthful, the loving, some of which are the same as the qualities required for man to reach his kamal. In essence, the Quran says those who strive to get close to God can do so with these qualities God gave them the potential for, through breathing something of His Spirit, if they choose to develop them and nurture them. We have a choice. We can kill these qualities, stomp them, or cause them to grow. We have the potential for both. Just like when we want to get close to someone, we share experiences with him or her. We get close to God by sharing qualities He has given us, like kindness, mercy, compassion. We can grow our ability to experience the beauty of these qualities in this life, the qualities that, by the way, come from the infinite source, or reject them. The more we grow in mercy or any of these qualities, the more we will experience them in this life and infinitely in the next life. Plus, the more we will experience the presence of God in our lives, because these qualities do come from Him. Now, what about the suffering part? Why the choice? Why couldn't God just program us with all these qualities so all humans be kind, compassionate, just, caring, merciful, etc.? Well, we are creatures, we grow, we become, so you can make us do anything you want, but you cannot make us develop any of these qualities without three things: intellect, free will, and experiences, which do include joy and suffering. All three are essential. For example, you can program a computer to always make correct statements, but you can never make it to be truthful. You can program it to be loyal to you, but can never make it be loving and have self-sacrifice. Never heard anyone say, "This Mac is the most loving and caring computer I've ever seen." You can program an X-ray machine to be the most accurate, yet it will never be compassionate. Because these things, like truth, compassion, caring, loving, mercy, etc., and even the opposites, are born only out of intellect, free will, and experiences. How can one who has never experienced or heard about or seen suffering know about mercy, compassion, and caring? On the other hand, once one sees suffering or experience it, his conscience might ask, "What can I do? I'm willing to sacrifice in order to help this person." And self-sacrifice can mean suffering on my part in order to accommodate others. Without this mental process, it will not become a compassionate deed. However, the compassionate deed does not happen on its own or by programming. It is by choice one makes. Same about the truth. Truth is a choice between telling it and living it or not. Often we tell the truth even if it is against us, at our own loss, or shall we say, at the cost of our own suffering. That is the truth. We often weigh the consequences. We accept risks or potential for suffering in many aspects of our lives, like when we sign contracts and make commitments in any partnership, including marriage. Intellect, free will, and experiences, including suffering, are all three of them, they are all essential. This is why the Quran stresses them so much, because without these three, all those godly qualities cannot exist. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.